Hello and welcome to the oddschecker betting show sponsored by Unibet. This is your Punchestown Festival Day 4 Friday preview, and I'm your host George Elek, and I'm delighted to be joined by a very relaxed looking Johnny Ward on his sofa here with his headset on. This is the Day 4 of the festival. We've seen a fair bit of racing thus far, and maybe the story of the week as to where we sit now on Thursday, just early Thursday afternoon before racing starts on Thursday, is Galopin Des Champs was beaten by Fast or Slow. The shock, Johnny, of the week so far, but maybe not in your eyes, even if you didn't capitalise on it as you'd have liked.
No, I absolutely bottled it, George. I did tip the horse up, but I backed him 3 places. Well, instead of backing like a winner at 66s, I backed a winner at 11 to 8 or something like that. So I did think that the thing about Punchestown, this happens year after year. Horses are over the top, and it's hard to predict horses maintaining their form because horses are not trained for Punchestown, they're trained for Cheltenham. Punchestown is then sort of that kind of no man's land in between the end of the season and Cheltenham, where you're obviously hoping that the horse produces his or her best, but it's not generally the be all and end all. And I thought there was a good chance Envoy Alain with his profile would bomb out, so I backed Fast or Slow and I put him up on the oddschecker anti-post column for Cheltenham, and that was a little bit agonising, but he'd run so well in that race, and he's very lightly raced at 3 miles, and it was strange. It went from, about a mile out, I was thinking he's in big trouble, and he ends up winning going away, but kind of the relevance of the race going forward, I'm not sure about, but you say I'm relaxed. I could use a different word other than relaxed for my general state today. I was at the races yesterday, met quite a few English race scorers as well. Great fun, like really good fun, and plenty of more fun to be had.
Plenty more fun to be had, even if you make me the day off the fun today. Hopefully there's no fun in that mug you're just drinking, having a sip out of just there. This is your Day 4 preview. So we're going to be going through the card of Friday's racing. Before we do, there is a welcome offer for new Unibet customers, money back up to £40 if your first racing bet loses. That is plus a £10 casino bonus as well. So make sure you click on the link below if you haven't got a Unibet account and sign up. Thank you to our sponsors, Unibet, as ever. Start with the 340, no prices here, so no worries if there's nothing that you want to flag, but this is the Hunter Chase over 2 miles and 5 furlongs. Johnny, anything for you in this one?
Yeah, this is probably one of those races that it actually probably is worth a good bit of analysis, because it's effectively limited to the local hunt kind of union, so it's a restricted trainers in the general area, and it's not surprising that you have the likes of Peter Maher targeting the race again. But I keep an eye out for Jet Fighter. He's only a 6-year-old, but yeah, it's very, very tough. I have to say, no, this wouldn't be my expertise at all.
Yeah, we'll move on then to what you are an expert in, hopefully. That is the 4:15, the handicap chase over 2 miles 5. Here, Kilcret and So Scottish are the 7-2 joint favourites. Life in the Park 4-1, 15-2 about Grandero Bello. We've got Authorised Art 17-2 as Max Charm, 17-2 Adamantly Chosen 9-1. Here, Johnny, any fancies in this one?
I do have a fancy. Yeah, I had to tip up 3 tips anti-post for oddschecker last week, and that went out on the emails, despite the fact that really the were like Punchestown race were very slow to be priced up this year. This race, Willie Mullins has won it with Blood Catil, Avantu, Kemboy, Real Steel, Asterion Furlange, and El Barra. So he certainly targets this race. He's a very good record in it, but I really like Grandero Bello here for Eddie Harty and his son Patrick. This horse was well fancied behind the Devil Coachman at Limerick the last day. I think the Devil's Coachman is actually a really good horse, and yeah. So when he won at Goran the last day, when he beat Max Charm subsequently finished behind Ain't That a Shame, who obviously was well fancied in the National, didn't quite get home. But Max Charm then went to one. He ran in his handicap debut at Fairyhouse the 10th of April off 135 and won really easily. So Grandera Bello to beat him with consummate ease, and he's run off 139. I think there's a very, very easy case to be made for him, George. He's going to be ridden forward. Ricky Doyle obviously gets on well with him. The tongue tie, I'm not really sure about why that is the case. Maybe they think there's improvement on the Limerick run. For me, it was probably that he was a little bit outstayed or maybe a little bit outclassed by the Devils coach, but I think he's a great chance here.
Great chance there for Grandero Bello, 15-2 with Unibet, and this is one of the races where Unibet are paying an extra place as well, the 4.15. So you're getting a fifth of four about your each way bet there if you follow Johnny in. On to the 4.50 now, the Mayor's Chase, and it's the repeat of the rematch between Impervious and Allegory Vassi. Impervious, unsurprisingly, the favourite here at 4-5. Allegory Vassi 11-4, who has had a run since she was beaten on the Friday at Cheltenham, where she finished second again, 4-9 behind Instit at Fairyhouse. Instit is 5-1, making up the top three in the market. Riviera Tell 8-1, LMA 20-1, Dulcita 20-1, Echoes of Family 200-1. Fascinating little race this, 7-runner affair, Johnny. Impervious, the odds-on favourite. Can you see anything beating her?
I can't accept herself, really, and that's the chance you're taking here. I suppose she was quite well beaten on her final start last season at Fairyhouse, but I suppose on the figures that was probably up with her better hurdling form anyway, and she's just taken the fences so well. I was at Cork on her second chase start when she beat Dino Blue. I think Dino Blue went about 1-10 after jumping the second last, and that's important because Impervious has a deceptive way of running where she has this really remarkable finishing kick. And you remember, George, Andy Holding was telling us how much he fancied her at Cheltenham. One of his bets of the week, really, and we're in a WhatsApp group with them, and like that was probably one of those. It was probably one of those bets that people would have gotten involved in on the Friday when they might have been kind of stuck for a winner, and she just delivered in such style.
To describe my Cheltenham week, Johnny.
Yeah, well, this is it. It seems a long time ago now, but she absolutely. Yeah, and we still have 3 days of Punchestown left. But she destroyed Allegory Vassi, and like I fancied Allegory Vassi over her. I thought that she was pretty faultless in terms of her own form so far, and the finishing kick she had up the hill. I do wonder, does she even take that much out for herself the way she races? And she's ultimately one of the most efficient jumpers of a fence I've seen, particularly as a mare. The day in Cork, it was really, really. It was a joy to behold how quick she is at her fences and the ground that she doesn't give away. And, Colin Murphy's probably not done a lot with her since Cheltenham, but watching that race, there's no way for me that you can fancy Allegory Vassi at all to reverse that form. If she produces her form, for me, she wins. And as such, to me, you're back in 10-11 that she gets rounds and runs her race. So I'd make her a 4-7 shot or something like that.
Yeah, 45 Impervious is with Unibet. Hard to see past her following up that Cheltenham victory with one there. In the 5.25 now, it is the Champion Hurdle, where State Man is the 2-1 favourite. I think the State Man Impervious double is going to be a popular one on the course, you'd have thought. Vauban is 5-2, second favourite. Sharjah 15-2, Pied Piper 11-1, Zanahiyr 12-1, Colonel Mustard 40-1. And just a few horses here, Johnny, that are quite relieved not to see the black and white of Michael Buckley lining up for once.
Well, this is it, and I guess your concern for, if you want to back State Man, is what effect the 9-length bashing that he got at Cheltenham will have on him. It had an effect on me because I met the guy who shall remain nameless that I had a distance bet with about Constitution Hill's performance, because I was bigging up State Man how good a horse he was, and it just shows that Constitution Hill could probably beat him about 15 lengths. But if he is over that, and I've no reason to suspect that he won't win his race because he's really consistent, I actually don't think 1-2 is the worst price in the world. Because he's really consistent, he runs his race, and what's going to beat him? Like, he essentially holds all of these. The one horse I think is quite interesting in the without market anyway is Pied Piper, who probably should have won at Cheltenham. He travels really well in his races. I know he was held by State Man at the Dublin Racing Festival, but he's only a 5-year-old. He's improving, and I'd certainly give him a chance of coming second. But the way I know, Willie's had a couple of horses who've either disappointed or kind of disappointed but managed to win, in the shape of Honor Jameen, who I thought wasn't at his best, and then you obviously had Galloping Deschamps. Like, for me, his horses are generally holding their form, and if State Man runs his race, he should win.
Yeah, 2-1, about State Man there, but Pied Piper 11-1. No without market currently on Unibet, but keep your eyes peeled. 11-1, a quarter of the two in the 6 runner race if you're that way inclined. Onto the 6 o'clock now, which is the Champion Novice Hurdle, just over 2 miles and 3 furlongs, where Impere Pass said it would be a popular treble. It's probably a popular double. It's probably going to be a popular treble, this one. Impere Pass is 130 on ahead of Champ Keeley at 9-2. High Definition 9-1. Amir Kabir 28-1. In the way of thinking 25-1, and the Company Sergeant is 66-1. Again, 6 runners here, Johnny. Not much fun for each way punters. Can you find an angle?
I mean, if you look at Gaelic Warrior, I laid Gaelic Warrior at Punchestown thinking that he mightn't get the trip. It was a terrible call because he obviously improved for 3 miles. But if you look at the performance of him yesterday, you're like, how good is Imperial Pass? Because it was a baffling drift at Cheltenham, to be fair. George didn't even go off favourite in the end, despite the fact that he'd been really well touted in the preview night circuit and all that, and often it's actually not a bad, when you get good word for a Willie Novice at a preview night, it's actually fairly reliable. And this horse, I don't know, he was sensational. How good could this horse be, and what are they going to do with him next season? So obviously he's likely to win here. There's a couple of horses that are interesting in the sense of going right-handed. Champ Kiley, who's obviously held by him at Cheltenham, he did hang right on that occasion, and he might run a bit better. But High Definition is interesting as well, because the way he won his maiden at Leopardstown, for me, he does want a trip. I think he might even end up staying like 3 miles, this horse. He's cheap pieces on the first time. I know he was well beaten at Cheltenham, but it wasn't that bad a performance in some respects. And I definitely think going right-handed is going to suit him as well. So he's quite interesting as well. But ultimately, it's all about the favourite. And I'm really fascinated if he goes novice chasing next season, where he's going to end up.
Do you think, because I know we spoke about this after Cheltenham, and there was the thinking was that they would probably do whatever Nicky Henderson and Michael Buckley decided not to do with Constitution Hill. Do you think after the kind of, I don't want to say the word workmanlike, but after when we saw Constitution Hill last summer entry, not that sparkling fashion over 2.5, is there any chance if Imperial Pass goes and puts another dominant performance here, we might see the Mullins camp thinking, you know what, maybe we shouldn't be so scared of what we're taking on next year?
Possibly, but it's, I suppose a couple of things with it. Constitution Hill was hard to gauge at Aintree, how much he had in the locker. I'd be inclined to think that he should stick at 2 miles because he's so quick.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the debate is whether he goes hurdling or chasing next season, not so much. For me, I think the Gold Cup, I know the Dawn Run double is an amazing thing to want to achieve, but I'd have reservations. And the Gold Cup is an incredible jumping test as well. I mean, you saw that it probably took its toll on Galopin Des Champs, I think, at Punchestown. It probably left a mark on him. He wasn't at his best yesterday. And, it just entails a lot of effort to train a horse from going to champion hurdle quality to then towards being a Gold Cup horse. But I don't know. I'd say Willie will probably have a word. Michael Buckley, no doubt, is at Punchestown this week, probably enjoying it along with everyone else. And I'd say Willie will ask him what is the plan, because ultimately Willie does place his horses really well. But at the same time, if Imperial Pass were to take on Constitution Hill, judging on the performance of Gaelic Warrior, it wouldn't be amazing if you gave him a race for me.
Yeah, I agree. And also, Constitution Hill, it's easy to forget is only a 6-year-old. Look at what's happening with Shishkin this season. There's no reason why Constitution Hill can't be rooted down the champion chase path with the prospect of stepping up and trip later on in his career too. So fascinating to see what will happen there. But Imperial Pass, the well-touted and well-fancied, and easy to see why 130 on favourite of the Atlanta Holmes Champion Novice Hurdle. The final 3 races on the card, we don't have prices for yet. I'm sure they'll be up in the next couple of hours or so. The 6:35 is another Hunter Chase, albeit maybe horses we know a fair bit more about, with Billaway in there, Vaucelet and others. Any view on this one?
I do, actually. And this might sound absolutely ridiculous, but I think Animex probably created history when he won at Fairyhouse, in the sense that he was probably the first horse ever on Betfair to touch 1,000 who essentially didn't actually come off the bridle. It was such a bizarre race. In fairness, he looked odds on to be pulled up at one point. Now, I'm not that familiar with Charlie Mullins, the jockey, he doesn't ride that much over fences. Like, he's obviously Tom's son. He rides rarely enough, and it was kind of hard to know what he thought of Animix throughout the race, because he was sent off a very easy to back 80-1 shot. He'd been well beaten behind Ferns Lock, or behind Billaway at Naas, and he fell at Corn. And it was kind of hard to know where his career was gone. Obviously, such a well-regarded horse back in the day. But he ended up actually winning really well. And if you were to take Billaway's performance at face value, I know he was second favourite, but Billaway is really reliable. He always finishes in the first two pretty much whenever he runs his race. Animix actually ended up bolting up. And I think because of the way that he was ridden and the confidence, if that's the word for the way that he was ridden, I think this is going to be one of the spectacles of the week, because you really don't know what Charlie Mullins is holding on to. And if you watch the race on the exchanges in running, and I know, if you're backing him with Unibet, you might even get an each way price. But if you are watching the betting in running, it's going to be compelling, because if this horse travels at all, the way he finished the race at Fairyhouse is going to be really hard to beat. And if you are in the camp of Vosley, who was obviously really well fancied at Cheltenham, I think David Christie's horses have just been a little bit disappointed in recent months. He said his three premier novice chasers, Ferns Lock, Vosley, and Wing Leader, have all been pretty well fancied in races and beaten. And particularly, I suppose, the last time when Animix won, I did think it was a little bit disappointing how Ferns Lock ran. He was sent off 4-11. He had looked very good, but he was ultimately beaten 10 lengths. And I just couldn't necessarily back David's horse with massive confidence at the moment. So I'd be all over Animix here. He's actually fairly unexposed in this discipline. As much as he's a 10-year-old, that's not old in this discipline. And his rider obviously gets on well with him.
Is there any danger that this was, even though it was a 5-runner race, the classic outsider of three, where the front top two in the market have basically gone out in front and taken each other on and effectively, bottomed each other out, only for something to kind of scoot on and pick up the pieces at the end?
That's definitely a small concern, because I guess, like, the two riders, Patrick Mullins and Barry O'Neill, they probably had it in their head that they had the other to beat. They finished 70 lengths clear of a horse that's actually not that bad in fourth. So they probably did go hard enough. And, like, I don't know what Charlie said after the race, but he probably would say, like, the race did fall apart a little bit. But at the same time, what's going to be different here? Are they going to be ridden more conservatively? Billaway is quite slow, so, like, he can't really go any faster than he did at Fairyhouse anyway. And I guess the thing for Ferns Lock was he was a little bit out to his left. But, I mean, that's going to be a concern here again. And for me, Animix was so much on top from the last. Like, he ended up winning by 4.5 lengths after somebody laid him at 1,000. I actually do fancy him to confirm that form.
Animix, the one for Johnny there in the 6:35. Two more races on the card. We've got the Novice Hurdle now, over 2 miles. No prices again. Anything you fancy here?
Yeah, this is quite tough, because you see Mark Walters riding Sam Majest, whose Irish debut looks obviously an interesting horse from the runs at Auteuil. Arctic Brazil, I mean, he's kind of, I was at Cork the day that he won, and he's kind of gone off the boil a bit. Monbeg Park is probably going to go chase next season. I think he's going to run very well, and he's going to be a really exciting chaser. He's a horse actually I keep an eye on in the antipost markets for Cheltenham. And another horse as well I've noticed is Night Sparkle. She's a very rare jumps runner for Michael Callan. She's only a 4-year-old, but she was actually quite well fancied at Naas when she ran really well, and she's interesting going forward. Like, tentatively, I'd probably watch the market here and see what the betting is with regarding the Willie Mullins newcomer. But with not really having the knowledge about that horse, it's a hard race to have a bet on.
Indeed, and we've got the bumper in the last over 2 miles and 2 furlongs, a big old field, and a horse that I assume will top the market in Lecky Watson, who for Willie Mullins, who came out very impressively on Andy Holding's speed figures, which he sent you and I on that WhatsApp the morning of the champion bumper, and ran a massive race at 80-1, met traffic and running, ran on again to finish 4th, but you'd think would be well touted despite there being 21 runners here.
Yeah, A Dream to Share was another of these horses that got away on me at Punchestown, in that I basically bumped into these randomers, spent the day with them, and spent more time chatting than actually looking at my betting options. And I went into this Longford GAA kind of fundraiser thing, gave a few tips, and essentially gave A Dream to Share as my best bet of the day. At the time, he was something like 11 days. then you rock up and you look before the bumper, and now he's into like a
4-6, yeah.
yeah. So it's like, and then I was like, am I going to back him now at this price? But in fairness, he's a very, very good horse, and as you mentioned, Andy really liked Lecky Watson's performance at Cheltenham. It's worth watching that race back because he was mad eye catching, and I know he's kind of been costly to follow. He was sent off 134-7 and 5-2 and beaten in his 3 previous starts, but he looks like he's a horse that actually is improving. I would give a mention to Walkaway Harry. Met one of the syndicate actually yesterday, and they're quite hopeful about his horse. Charles Burns will have a couple of good runners later on in the week, and I think he's interested as well. But it's going to take a hell of a performance to beat the favourite. One other to mention is Quantum Storm. He was behind Ballyburn when they clashed at Punchestown, and Ballyburn is obviously a horse that is quite well regarded. And by the time you listen to this, Ballyburn will have would have possibly justified odds on favoritism in the last on the Thursday, so keep an eye out for that form, but he's very promising into the bargain.
Interesting stuff. That brings our day 4 preview to a close. Thank you very much to Johnny. We're going to be recording our day 5, our Saturday preview, straight after this, so do subscribe to the oddschecker YouTube channel or the podcast, where you can find all the oddschecker betting shows there. Thank you very much to our sponsors, Unibet. I should have mentioned as well that not only do we have the extra places in the 4:15 and the 7:45, but Unibet will also be boosting the price of the favourites in the 5:25, the 6 o'clock, and the 6:35 from 4 o'clock on Friday. So that means for you favourite backers, you're going to have State Man. I mean, unless something drastic happens, it'll be State Man and Impair A Pass will both be boosted on the day of racing. So do check that out. And of course, the welcome offer as well. So if you click on the link below, if you haven't got an account, money back up to £40 if your first racing bet loses, plus a £10 casino bonus. Cheers, Johnny. We'll be back for day 5 shortly. Hopefully a couple of winners in there. Please do ensure that you're gambling responsibly.